Good morning. I think it's about time we get this show on the road, and thanks for joining. My name is John Ingates, and today we're going to be discussing the concept of open cloud. The title of the presentation is The Inevitability of the Open Cloud, and I think by the end of this, you'll see why that statement is more or less true. Today in the ecosystem that we live in, I bet that most of you could name at least one open source operating system, probably an open source database, possibly a blog platform or two, a development environment, but most of us today couldn't name even one or two open source cloud platforms, and I think that needs to change, and I think that's what we're going to be discussing today, how that's shaping up and where that's headed. So with that, let's get started. My name is John Ingates. I'm the CTO at Rackspace. I've been at Rackspace for almost 11 years now, and there's some contact information there if you ever need to get a hold of me. The company I work for, Rackspace, what do we do? I think some people have heard of us, others have not maybe, and so I'll just give you a little bit of a frame of reference before we dig into the meat of the presentation. Rackspace is a hosting company. Our roots were in managed and dedicated hosting, but today we offer a wide portfolio of services, including cloud. Cloud is one of the most rapidly growing parts of our business, and it accounts for over 15% of our business today. It is, by all accounts, the part of the business that's, I guess, the most exciting from an industry perspective. Everybody wants to talk about cloud. I spend a lot of my time talking about cloud with our largest customers, our prospects, and whatnot. And cloud does consume the conversation. Rackspace as a company, just to give you a little frame of reference, this slide would normally build, but it doesn't build in WebEx, so I'll just go from bottom up. Rackspace serves 130,000 customers around the globe. We have 66,000 servers under management. That's a pretty good-sized chunk of servers. The people that manage those, we call those rackers. We have 3,200 rackers. All that stuff that we manage and take care of for our customers amounts to about $860 million in revenue. We serve over 40% of the Fortune 500, so that's a lot of big companies, but a lot more small companies. If you think about that 130,000 number, that's a big group of smaller companies. Our company was really founded on the idea of serving small and medium businesses, but over the years we've actually gone into the larger companies as well. We take care of those servers in 9 data centers around the globe on 3 continents. And this top line says one Rackspace. I think the long-term goal for our company is to really have this broad set of services, a broad portfolio, but really treat it like one company where your customers can come to Rackspace and consume all of these services from us and really get one seamless experience. That's the concept of one Rackspace. So now we'll dig into the heart of the presentation. If you think about what's going on in the marketplace today, everyone is going to cloud or at least thinking about going to cloud. At its core, cloud is about cheaper and more agile computing, a platform that is radically cheaper, sometimes 20 to 50% cheaper, and in terms of deployment time, radically faster, reducing deployment times from weeks to minutes in many cases for a lot of companies. You see these charts everywhere of cloud computing taking off. This is sort of just a fun chart that shows it going to the stars, so to speak. But that is how the market's headed. I mean, that's where we're going. The industry analysts all agree. I mean, you can't turn around without hearing somebody talking about some statistics around how big cloud is going to be. If you're a company that's not thinking about cloud, you really ought to be. You ought to be taking it as a maybe a 2011 challenge to get your cloud strategy together because your competitors are. That's what's going on in the market. And I think that's why most of the people are here at this conference, to figure out what to do with cloud. Rackspace, as a company, we have really embraced this concept of cloud computing. We've jumped in with both feet, so to speak. We've been very aggressive, and there's a lot more to come. These are just a sampling of some of the products and services that we offer. In fact, one of those products, Cloud Load Balancers, is something that's actually launching today. It probably just launched literally as we speak. We were in beta, but today was the official launch day for Cloud Load Balancing. The power of this full portfolio of cloud and dedicated services is really central to Rackspace's approach to serving enterprise customers. The customers that we take care of really have a wide variety of needs, and this portfolio helps sort of capture some of those needs for our customers. But really, again, we've jumped in with both feet. We've built a lot of this technology ourselves over the years. We've been doing this for 3 or 4 years, and throughout that time, we found that a lot of the technology needed to build cloud services wasn't available as a commercial product. It wasn't available as an open source project. It was really something that you had to do on your own. Now, even today, to some extent, that's true. This is 2011. There are only a handful of commercial or other projects that are available to help companies build their own clouds. So, as you build your cloud strategy, if you want to use the cloud, or if you want to build your own cloud, who do you turn to? The market is out there. I mean, everyone here is here to learn about the cloud computing, what to do with it in your business. So we're going to talk about it today. It's a confusing environment. Everyone out there has a message. These are some of the companies that are recognized as companies that are building cloud solutions or building clouds or building software to build clouds. But the answer is still difficult to get to. What to do? What is the best path? Where to go? There are some well-worn paths, I guess. The public cloud is a well-worn path so far in terms of cloud adoption, but there are some challenges going that route. Today, the public clouds that are out there, they get most of the attention. They're very powerful, lots of benefits, but one of the big problems that they have is they force dependence. Some people call that dependence lock-in, but that dependence is really built into the platform. The ability to move off of these services or diverge from their roadmap is very difficult after you start to build your platform or your software or whatever you're building on top. It becomes more and more difficult over time to sort of unhinge or disconnect yourself from these public cloud offerings because they're not all alike. There is no 100% compatibility from one to the other, and when you decide to move, you're going to not be able to take all of the services with you. That's a challenge for people. That's why I think there's still some limited acceptance of public clouds by companies of all sizes, but primarily the big guys. They don't want to be locked in to a particular vendor or one particular set of technologies. If you think about the other path that I think people talk a lot about, it's the idea of a private cloud. Now, a private cloud has a different set of challenges. I mean, we would think about the costs. Costs are a big challenge. The idea that it's not as scalable or infinitely scalable as a public cloud. But I think the biggest challenge is that it's sort of back to the same concept of lock-in, but this is the original lock-in. This is the business as usual lock-in where most of these big enterprise hardware and software companies want you to buy into their stack. They have a solution, but it's very expensive. It's very highly integrated, and it extends the current paradigms that we have today. If you think back to the mainframe era and the mid-range computing era, there were companies that really, once you got onto their platform, it was very, very difficult to extract yourself, even if you wanted to. And in some ways, private clouds with these sort of very commercial, very highly integrated stacks have sort of that same challenge. So that is a challenge of deploying private clouds today. There has to be a better way, right? I mean, everybody looks for a solution to these problems, and I think open source is probably the right answer for a lot of companies. Open source has solved this problem in the past. If you think about what open source did many years ago in the operating system space, I think that's the first experience most of us had with open source software. It was probably Linux. Linux is probably the best example that most of us can point to. When Linux sort of burst onto the scene back in the early 90s, I guess it was, it really started, at first I guess it didn't have too big of an impact, but very quickly it had a huge impact on the way enterprise IT worked. It disrupted the business models of a lot of very large software companies. It brought the costs down. It introduced the concept of standards. I mean, these distributions of Linux were were standardized. Everybody, used their own technologies on top, but the kernel was pretty standard. You could run the same software across multiple Linux distros. It was portable. You could take it any server anywhere. I mean, you didn't have to buy a particular brand of server. You didn't have to buy a particular brand of storage. It was therefore portable. You could move it from your own servers to a hosting provider like Rackspace or anywhere you wanted, really. And it was extendable. This meant that people could build on top of Linux. They could build features into Linux. And for that reason, it was very rapidly evolving. The community got behind it. I think the community pushed to make sure that there were options out there. At that time, if you recall, I think Windows was a dominant operating system. We were still sort of in the world of Novell and Windows, but Linux started to really disrupt those two guys. And beyond just the traditional Windows or Intel architecture, it really started to disrupt even further into the traditional computing platforms that companies ran at that time. So, big effect open source had on that, and it goes beyond operating systems. We see it in databases. We see it in all kinds of different areas within the internet industry. So, cloud or open source in the cloud ecosystem. The next wave of the web era, I believe, is in the cloud. Open source will extend to this set of technologies, just like it did with the operating system and database, just like it did with these other platforms that we've discussed. But where is it? So what's going on? Where is it? I think a movement has already begun, and it's called OpenStack. I don't know how many folks on this call have heard of OpenStack, but I hope by now quite a few. And OpenStack was announced about 8 months ago. It's been in the works for a little bit longer than that, but announced officially about 8 months ago. The basic goal of the OpenStack project was to transform computing for everyone, not just for service providers, not just for big companies, but really for everyone. At Rackspace, we had tons and tons of servers and computing equipment that we wanted to turn into a cloud and be able to offer to our customers. We needed software to do that. Clouds are powered by software. And again, I told you earlier in the call, we had to build a lot of that ourselves. So with the OpenStack platform, what we wanted to do was take a lot of that software that we had built and put it into the hands of people that were outside the walls of Rackspace, people like the people on this call, people like enterprise computing IT shops, people that are in small and medium businesses building startups, people building platform clouds or software clouds. I mean, I think the software that we built, honestly, it long term it wasn't going to be a differentiator for us, and we thought that it might as well be an open source project and be available to more people. So that's what we did. I'm sorry, I skipped one slide here. We launched this program or this project called OpenStack. The project, again, at its core is software to build clouds. The core technology behind OpenStack was contributed by Rackspace and NASA. We were the two sort of founding organizations behind OpenStack, but there was a lot of contributions from other big players. You see on the slide at the bottom, Citrix and Dell and quite a few others. We believe that what Linux did for the server operating system, OpenStack will do for the data center. It will give you a software stack to help you build clouds. It will have an ecosystem around it devoted to innovation, devoted to supporting the platform, devoting to building on top of it, all of the things that are good about open source. It will give you flexibility in the way you deploy. You won't be locked in to a particular hardware platform. You won't be locked into a particular location. I mean, it will be something that you can run anywhere. There will be standards that will emerge. Standards are already emerging. The APIs that people build clouds on top of are very critical in this, and so far we haven't seen in the cloud ecosystem a ton of standards, but I think OpenStack is changing that. Again, this is really software that meets the needs of public and private cloud providers, being very simple to deploy and very scalable. That scalable piece, I think, is a critical component too. When people think about clouds, they think of more or less infinite scalability. At least the platform should allow for that. And I think some of the open source projects that tried to get off the ground with cloud platforms, so far a lot of those guys were they were not as scalable as they needed to be for big service providers or large-scale enterprises. And you really do need that in a cloud. You need massive scalability, but also being something that's very simple to implement. And I think OpenStack is starting to solve both of those challenges. Now, what is OpenStack? I think the next question most people would ask is, what does it do for me? What can I build with OpenStack? There are three core projects behind OpenStack: the compute project, the storage project, and an image management project. If you think about what people consume in an infrastructure cloud today, they want to be able to consume servers or virtual servers, virtual machines. They need a place to store their data, and they need a place to hold on to their OS images that they're booting. And I think these three projects are the core that allow for companies to do exactly that. If you think about Rackspace's product set, we have a project or a product called Cloud Servers. OpenStack Compute is the technology that would power Cloud Servers. We have another product called Cloud Files, and then in this case, OpenStack Object Storage would power Cloud Files. If you look out into the marketplace, you might also use Amazon's EC2 and S3 as examples of this type of technology. Now, they're not using OpenStack, but OpenStack solves sort of the same problem for companies. If they wanted to build their own EC2 or their own S3, these are the types of technologies that they would look at. So, this is, again, the basis for a public or private cloud. It is a very well-tested system at this point. I mean, Rackspace has been running most of this technology in-house for quite a long time. NASA is now using this in production, so it's getting a workout, and it scales very nicely. There's a large group of people now, building these technologies. The project itself is really very vibrant. There is hundreds of developers every day contributing code to this, and there's actually next week in Silicon Valley, there's a big design summit where I think it's 300 to 400 people are attending, and you can sort of tell by the size of that attendance that the project is off and running and has some momentum. Now, I'm going to switch gears for just a second here because I think I need to sort of explain why, beyond just the software itself, why OpenStack is such a powerful concept in this cloud. There are sort of, throughout the, the history of computing, there have been ecosystems that have driven innovation. In fact, we live in a world where ecosystems drive innovation. The cloud is absolutely one of those markets. The cloud, this example here is not particularly exactly like the cloud computing platform, but it is a cloud in sort. It is a cloud where you go and buy your music, and in some cases store your music, and it works across multiple hardware platforms, and it's an ecosystem that I think once the user sort of taps into it, they feel the power of that ecosystem. I think the cloud is ripe for a model like this, where there's an ecosystem wrapped around it. So far, there's been very limited examples of a powerful ecosystem around a cloud project, but that's changing, and I think there are models that we can look back at to see the power of this ecosystem in operation. Again, this doesn't allow me to build my slides, but if you look across the top row, you see an ecosystem around operating systems. Historically, Solaris and Windows were very, sort of very dominant in this operating system ecosystem. And when Linux came onto the scene, it offered an open alternative to the traditional models for operating systems. The visionary in the first column, was Solaris. Windows was the company that, Microsoft was the company that made Windows mass consumable, put it on every desktop and every server out there, and then Linux came along and built an open architecture, an open model for that very same challenge. If you look at the smartphone market, you see it happening again. BlackBerry was the visionary that more or less created the smartphone. I think everybody looked at BlackBerry as an innovative company. They put technology out there that everybody had to have. And then, Apple came along and sort of made it mass consumable. Instead of business people. It was everyone. Everyone wanted an iPhone. And then, recently, a couple of years now, Android has been on the market, and now Android is the most popular smartphone platform in the world, and that's because it's an open platform. I don't think it would have that level of adoption had it not been open. Any smartphone vendor, any handset maker, any software developer can tap into the Android ecosystem, and they have a role there. They have a place in it. And I think that's a different aspect than some of these other ecosystems as well. As you're not locked out if you're part of the Android or the Linux or the open source, I guess, ecosystem. And I think that same thing is starting to happen in the cloud. I'll put a couple of logos down there that that I think we owe a lot of gratitude, a debt of gratitude to, in terms of the people that have been innovative in this market space. VMware more or less created the concept of virtualization. They put it in every enterprise essentially out there, and sort of allowed us to begin using virtualization in production. Amazon did a great job at sort of introducing us to cloud. They're still today the dominant player in cloud computing. Rackspace is number 2 behind Amazon, but they have really brought the cloud to the masses. They have made it possible for anyone to tap into computing for a very low cost. But OpenStack is the platform that will open the cloud. It will make it possible for anyone to run it anywhere. It will drive some standards. It will make it something that people can contribute to. Everyone has a role within OpenStack. The hardware vendors like OpenStack. The software vendors like it because they all have a place and a role to play here. And I think that was a threat for a lot of companies. Cloud computing presented a threat that basically you didn't have a place to play or a role to play within the ecosystem, and OpenStack changes that. And that's what's so powerful about ecosystems that are open. Open ecosystems have that effect. They have the ability to be inclusive rather than exclusive. So as we've sort of covered ecosystems, what's going on with OpenStack's ecosystem? OpenStack's ecosystem is growing rapidly. It's very vibrant. It's got tons of companies that you'd recognize in it, and more being added every day. Rackspace, I put it at the center because we were one of the companies that kicked it off. NASA obviously was a big contributor as well, but there's a lot of other companies now contributing software. Dell was an early partner and contributor to this platform. Citrix, very large contributor. Even right now they're contributing code that's really changing the shape of OpenStack every day. Cisco got on board with OpenStack. Microsoft contributed code to allow OpenStack to run on their hypervisor, Hyper-V. I should mention that this platform is hypervisor agnostic. It needs a hypervisor. You need to get a hypervisor. It doesn't come with one, but it is hypervisor agnostic. So you can run on the Microsoft Hyper-V. You can run on Citrix's Zen. You can run on the KVM hypervisor. You can even run on VMware. So it really is an open platform with regard to the participation of these companies building hypervisors. But beyond that, there are all kinds of opportunities for companies to participate. Intel and AMD are both partners on the OpenStack project. They want to make sure that their chips are very well supported within this platform. There are service providers that are part of this. There are consulting shops that are building businesses on top of the OpenStack architecture and the OpenStack ecosystem. So you can see, I don't even have all the logos on here, but you can see that it's again a very vibrant platform and or ecosystem already off and running. A lot of these companies, every day are contributing code that is making this project better. It's one of the fastest growing open source projects that we've ever seen, and the world is rallying behind OpenStack. Real commitments are happening, real deployments are happening, and real effort is going into the project. Now, in the long term, our vision for OpenStack is to empower companies to run clouds anywhere. You can run them at Rackspace. We certainly appreciate it if you do. But we also we only believe that OpenStack and cloud wins when other providers are running it and people are running it in-house. We think OpenStack is the platform that will power that. We know there will be others. We do have a vision for supporting multiple platforms across multiple locations. I put a few logos down at the bottom of companies that have either started to support OpenStack or are thinking about it at least. The folks at Microsoft, CA, BMC, our own company that we acquired last year, CloudKick. These are really all cloud management platforms. And the vision for these cloud management platforms is to have some standards that they can build against to allow for cloud management, federated cloud management across multiple locations and multiple providers. Once companies have the choice to run their cloud anywhere they choose, then that opens up the floodgates in terms of the deployment model. People are a little bit leery of deploying on clouds that they can only run in one place with one vendor. And I think the power of OpenStack is that it really opens that possibility to anyone, anywhere. What does OpenStack mean for you? For a small or medium business or an enterprise, what does it mean? Well, it means you can run it at Rackspace, which is obvious. That's pretty straightforward. You can run it with another service provider. There are already service providers out there offering OpenStack-based clouds. There are more in the hopper. You can run it in-house. We've talked about the concept of private clouds. Today, you can go download OpenStack. You can install it yourself. You can also build it in a hosted format. We've actually done some things that we would consider private clouds, but they're in a hosted format. So they essentially are dedicated to one customer, but they're in a Rackspace data center. That's just a different form of private cloud, but it is a very viable one. Some companies are building their businesses on top of it, and I mentioned a couple of business models. One is obviously consulting businesses. People want to help implement clouds for other people, but also think about platform clouds or software as a service clouds. Those clouds both need infrastructure underneath. And why would a company want to reinvent the wheel when they're really in business to build a platform? Why would they want to take care of all that infrastructure? So we see companies today starting to rethink how they are managing their infrastructure to power their PaaS clouds or their SaaS clouds. So building businesses on top of it. There are other ways to build businesses on top. There are modules that need to be written for OpenStack. If you think about commercializing OpenStack, you need billing modules. You need other components that might not be as mature or might not be present within the platform. And that's an opportunity for people to build on top. And this last bullet is really Rackspace's role in helping companies build clouds. We launched a company or a group within our company called Cloud Builders, Rackspace Cloud Builders, and that group is chartered with a mission to go and help companies build their own private clouds or their own service provider clouds based on OpenStack. We acquired a company last year called Anso Labs. Anso Labs was the company that had built NASA's Nebula cloud for them. And we acquired that company in order to bolster our capabilities in terms of building and deploying clouds. And so if you need help with it, we're there to help. So next steps. If I was, if I had my druthers, I'd have people out there getting involved in OpenStack. I think if you could join the OpenStack community, whether it's even just sort of paying attention to it or contributing to it, it doesn't matter. I mean, it really is something that I think it's powerful no matter what. You can download the code today. You can build a pilot cloud. It's sort of something that you want to start seeing how it works, understand the concepts. That's possible today. There's just a brand new release that just launched that is very solid in terms of the code base. It's very easy to deploy. The Design Summit coming up. Unfortunately, if you're not already signed up, it's closed. There's too many people in attendance already. But the next one after that, you could certainly attend a Design Summit. And if you want to find out more about OpenStack, just go to openstack.org. It's a very vibrant open community there. You can actually read the forums. There's a blog. You can really start to get involved with the community. At this point, I've covered what I wanted to cover. I know I'm probably a little ahead of schedule, but that's okay because it gives me a little time for a Q&A. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts on OpenStack? Please go ahead and type them into the WebEx console. If you have any questions, there's a place to type it in. I can't see your side of it, but I can see the questions that are coming in And I'll just give you a couple of seconds here to ask a few questions, and then I'll start to address them. So here's the first question. Is Rackspace running OpenStack for all of its clouds? Rackspace has built a lot of the code that we use for our clouds in-house. I mentioned that early on. And we are using quite a bit of the OpenStack code today. Now, some of the code, again, is being written as we speak, and we haven't necessarily adopted every piece of the code, as it stands. We've sort of had to balance some of the features that we needed that were part of our platform prior to launching OpenStack, and sort of get some of those features into the OpenStack platform before we could fully adopt it. We are, in the process of adopting more and more of that stack every day. We believe in, sort of using the open source stack as is, rather than trying to tailor it specifically to Rackspace. We want to use the OpenStack distribution that's out there. And we also want to make sure that a lot of the features that we need to go back into the platform. Again, the power of open source is that everyone benefits from the features and the capabilities that are written by companies like Rackspace. Here's a good question. What is the minimum number of physical machines I need to test OpenStack? I believe I'm not the guy that runs it every day. We have a great group of developers and engineers and software developers that are doing this. I believe the answer is you can actually test it on one machine. Obviously, it's not a test in terms of scalability or performance, but just to understand the concepts, I think there are ways to deploy on one physical machine. Now, realistically, you'd probably want to have a handful, 2 or 3 machines, maybe 5, to get a good feel of the system. But I know that I've seen deployments in the labs, and the guys building the software are deploying on their laptops in some cases to get a good understanding of the code and the architecture. Here's a question. By moving to OpenStack, does this help users avoid vendor lock-in? Absolutely. The answer is yes. The idea of lock-in, if you think about what sort of the definition of lock-in is that you can only run at one location or one service provider or use one vendor's sort of integrated solution. We think OpenStack helps people avoid lock-in by making the code portable. It can run anywhere. It also runs on any type of hardware, any type of x86 architecture at this point. That means Windows, or that means it supports Windows and it supports Linux. It supports AMD and Intel processors. It runs on any flavor of server equipment. We run it on some Dell machines. You can certainly run it on other brands. In fact, we also run it on what we call white box servers, which are just generic machines. So it really sort of unhinders the idea of moving or picking up your deployment, moving elsewhere. The OpenStack architecture certainly does solve that lock-in problem. Let me read a couple questions here before I answer the next one here. Let's see. How far does OpenStack go in providing a provisioning tool for managed hosting companies' customers? Okay, so that's a couple of stages of answer there. So OpenStack is designed for service providers. It has some components to it that provide a way for customers of other hosting companies to help their customers provision into the cloud. For example, there is an OpenStack iPhone, iPad, and Android software tool. You can sort of take the open source project and customize it, tailor it for your needs, compile it, and actually launch your own iPhone app to help your customers provision. I do a demo quite often for my customers where I use my OpenStack iPad application to deploy new instances of Windows and Linux into the cloud. And so that component is there. There is a portal that I would say is, at this point, not a 100% full-featured portal. It's not the same portal that Rackspace is using today, but it is a good basis for a good start for a portal. And I think because of the openness of the APIs, it's very easy for companies to get their head around how to build a portal on top of OpenStack. There's a lot of already client libraries for building on the existing APIs. Again, the open source project gives you a lot of valuable insight into how portals are written and how the code should work. And I think that's the basis for other companies to build their own cloud businesses, so to speak. Let's see. I'm looking through my chat window here. Another question. It says, what is the API for OpenStack? Web Services, Java, any? So the API for OpenStack is a REST-based API, very open architecture, very easy to develop against. There are client libraries developed against or on top of those that REST API, so it makes it easier for people to integrate with. The API is very standard, and it's an open source API. For example, if you wanted to deploy that API on top of another cloud that was not OpenStack based, the licensing model actually allows for that, and we think that will happen as well. We think people will build compatibility layers on top of other cloud platforms using the OpenStack API, and that is a powerful concept as well. Just again, the power of the ecosystem is that people start to rally around a set of standards and a set of services like the API. Here's a question it came from Twitter. It says, what is the portal like in OpenStack? The portal, we've talked a tiny bit about it. The portal is very useful for some basic needs. If you want to deploy virtual machines, if you want to deploy storage into the cloud, the portal is again, a basis for that. It might not be right for every organization, but certainly right for a private cloud. The OpenStack architecture is designed to be driven in an automated fashion. We would hope that companies, as they build their cloud strategies, are thinking about beyond just having a portal. They really should be driving automation across the entire environment, and that's what the API is really designed for. So automation is key to scaling and to delivering a self-serve cloud. The portal is there again for a foundation, and I think most companies would want to either build their own portal or integrate it within their own portal. And that's also an opportunity, I think, for businesses to be built on top of OpenStack, people that are going to build portals for very special use cases, for special industries. That's an opportunity as well. Here's a question. Is OpenStack intended to be extensible to allow any organization to customize it? The answer is very much yes. Extensible by all accounts. It's an open source project. It's a very liberal open source license. We use the Apache 2 license model, which means that you can definitely customize it. You're not required to contribute your changes back to the project. So it's very liberal in that regard. And definitely we want people to customize it for their needs. We hope that they contribute their changes back to make the project better, but again, it's not required. Let's see. Is there any chargeback method in place for OpenStack? Well, that's a good question. Chargeback is a concept that's used quite frequently within large organizations, and you can sort of think of chargeback as billing. It's internal billing, and because Rackspace designed OpenStack to be built for a service provider, we do need billing. We need to be a way to track who uses how much resource and who, where they used it, when they used it, and therefore there's a lot of data that gets, created out as to who did what when, and that very same data could be used just as easily for internal chargeback as it's used for billing. Now, it may not have all the components you need. There is a couple of companies within the open source project that are building billing engines for OpenStack. We didn't include the code that we're using for billing because it's commercial code. We bought it from someone else, so we couldn't include that. But there are ways to very easily integrate with other systems to allow for exactly that. So yes, the answer is that there are methods in place. There may be some code that you either need to write or integrate or buy, but it is very possible. Here's a similar question. Does OpenStack include tenant billing and metering? The metering is there. The billing, it would be something that probably would have to be a module that would be added on. Let's see. Here's a question. This is a good. This is one that maybe will help correct maybe something that I may have misspoke or misled. The question is, do you mean that I could, for example, run OpenStack software on, example, an EC2 instance? Could I run OpenStack on EC2? I don't think so, because OpenStack essentially is designed to help you create an EC2 type of system. That doesn't. It's not compatible with EC2 by any stretch of the imagination in terms of, it's not the same code, but it is possible to sort of build an environment that looks a bit like EC2. You cannot. I don't think you can run OpenStack on EC2. Maybe you could do the storage code. You might be able to do the storage code. It wouldn't be exactly the right architecture long term, but it could be built there maybe for testing. The compute code would be a little harder because typically OpenStack speaks to directly to a hypervisor, and a hypervisor runs underneath EC2. So therefore, you would have to have access to the hypervisor to really make use of that. And I don't believe that Amazon would allow for that in their model. So the real answer is probably not. You wouldn't want to run this on top of EC2. Let's see what else. Okay, so one last question maybe I'll take, and then I'll let you guys, I'll give you back a little of your day here. So how does OpenStack relate to other open initiatives like Open Data Center Alliance? Is this the start of establishing a vendor-driven standard, maybe standards body? I think, my opinion, this is only my opinion, there have been a number of standards efforts out there. I'm not criticizing or pointing fingers at any one particular standards body. I think, the standards efforts that have sort of so far been out there have lacked a sort of a real-world platform or a real-world system to talk about. They've talked about it in anticipation of projects and capabilities, but really, they've done some efforts that have not gotten as far as we would have liked at this point. I think OpenStack, if nothing else, it represents a place that people can come together and talk about some standards. They can talk about what's going on in the ecosystem. They can contribute ideas. They can see which ideas work, which ones resonate. And that's, I think, a good basis for standards. If enough people run this code, the standards will start to emerge by, sort of just by nature, by themselves. And I think that's a powerful way for standards to emerge. And I think we've already seen that start to happen. In OpenStack, there's so many people contributing that you start to see a real demand for standards rather than just a wish for standards. Once companies start to run this, they will send people to standards bodies. They will rally for standards to emerge. They will contribute new capabilities that will become part of standards. And I think, it's a very, very powerful foundation for standards to emerge. So it's not necessarily overlapping with any other standards bodies or projects. It's not, at this point, I don't think OpenStack is, part of a particular standard, but it is something that I think should be part of the dialogue. So with that, I think I'm going to wrap up, and I don't see too many more questions coming in. So I'll wrap up. I'll give you a little time back, a little break. And I do thank you for spending time with me today. Good luck on the rest of your Cloud Slam events today. We're excited to be a part of it. Thank you for the time, and hope to see you next year. Thanks.